Hello, and welcome to another week of the Storied Arcs podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
And today we are discussing the Fade Out Volume 2. And I think we could pretty much dive in where we left off last time. There's, it's one continuous story. There are clear breaks. Mm-hmm. But we, very much a Charlie-centric story. I guess we should mention this is issues 5 through 8.
5 through 8, yeah. And I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because the first note I have is that when you go, we talked about the at the beginning of the trade, you have your cast of characters, right? Where they give you a little headshot and a name and kind of who this person is, which is very helpful as a reader, to put some names to faces. What I think is really interesting here is when Volume 2 starts off, Gil is technically the first person we see, and then it's Charlie. Even though I do think Charlie is still our protagonist, he's still our main character. From a narrative standpoint in this volume, like, I think you could argue that Gil has more of a focus. I think we talked last week, as the mystery leaves off, this idea of who killed Valeria, this murder mystery thing, and Charlie's whole thing of, he's not a detective, right? He's not really looking into this, but he's starting to find that he's involved somehow. But as we see in this volume, he doesn't really, he has like one moment where he's kind of questioning and looking into it. But other than that, he's not really doing anything.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's a mystery,
yeah,
but no one's trying to solve the mystery.
Exactly. Well, I think
he sits around and puzzles about it a lot.
But
he's not snooping. He's not sleuthing.
Charlie absolutely isn't, because I don't think Charlie, he cares. He cares about maybe finding out the truth, but he's not motivated to find the truth for finding truth's sake. You know what I'm saying? Like, his motivation would be like, how does this affect me? Like, if I dig into this, is it going to be a problem for me? He wants to know, because Valeria was clearly a friend of his, someone he cared about. And he was present there as he's starting to slowly recollect and recall. So he has a desire for answers, but he has no drive to find them. And so I think what's interesting in this volume is that Gil is someone who, it seems to be trying to track something down, whether he actually knows or has figured it out, whatnot. He is the one that is pushing that story forward. And I really love the scene. Last week we talked about how the Fade Out kind of does little things here and there to ground you in reality, like the idea that in Volume 1, like Clark Gable makes a cameo, like Clark Gable, and his connection, what connection he has with Charlie. Yeah. Here we name check Desi Arez. Gil goes to meet with the author Dashiell Hammett, like the hard-boiled noir detective author, someone that actually existed, someone that, the way he's acted in the way that he's presented here, the idea that he was, Hammett was suspected or maybe even convicted of like communist ties, communist sympathizer, things like that. And so the fact that he would be like amenable to seeing and talking and knowing Gil, even tangentially, because otherwise Gil's a blacklisted writer. He's toxic for the most part, but he can go and still meet with Hammett. And I like the idea of Gil sitting with Hammett and like pitching the hypothetical, like, oh, I'm stuck on this story. Right. Here's what we got, this murder mystery, and Hammett humoring him in a way. I guess it's unclear whether he, it's like, this is all a story, right? But still playing it out as like, if this were a story I were writing, this were a narrative I were writing, here are the things that, here's the problem in your story right here. Here's what I would do next, yada, yada. The idea that you're playing out this hypothetical, and Gil is taking that as like kind of direction and motivation for what he's doing with the studio and Valeria's death, so he's looking into it in a way. Again, we don't know what his motivations are. They're probably not entirely pure, because what we've shown of Gil is that he's not the greatest guy in the world, but he's doing more than Charlie is. And Charlie was there. Charlie has like actively removed himself from trying to be a part of this. Like he's like actively trying to not solve the murder.
Right.
Which is odd for, again, in this type of story, there's always someone that steps up, and like, I'm going to solve this thing because truth matters, yada, yada, yada. Brubaker and Phillips aren't telling that story, no one's looking into this out of mostly a sense of self-preservation. No one here is dedicated to the truth, which is, you always have that character that's like that no matter what, we're going to find the truth. Even if it doesn't matter in the end, we're going to expose the truth, and I'm going to know, and you're going to know that I know. But Charlie is just like, you know what? Like, I'm out, like I have other bad decisions to make.
I think there are two really good. I think there are two characters who are deeply concerned with knowing all of the facts, maybe three, but at this point we know two for sure. One is Gil. Gil does want to know. He's a truth seeker. The other one is Brodsky.
Well, yes.
Because he wants to suppress the truth, but in order to do that, he has to know the truth.
Yes.
And that's like, so there's an essay by a guy named I want to say Harry Frankfurt. He's a Princeton philosophy professor. It came out in 2004, so it's bound into a little 30-page book. It's really great. We're a family-friendly rating. I can't say the name of the essay. It's on BS, but he does a philosophical treatise on the term BS. And he was like, what is BS? And I would encourage everyone to read it because it's never been more relevant than right now. And he says, a lie, a lie is still better than BS, because a lie, in order to lie, you have to know what the truth is and work around it. So like, a lie indicates that you know what's true. You're avoiding it, which is bad, but you're still working around it. Whereas BS is just fabricating a completely alternate reality and telling a story over there. And, Brodsky is not a BSer. Yeah.
No.
He is a liar, but he wants to be perhaps the only one who knows the truth at the end of the day. He wants to keep it. He's kind of managing up in some ways. He's like, I'm going to, that term where, you have to do things to anticipate and accommodate the people above you, as if, they're working for you. But then the wild card to me is, I always forget her name, Dottie.
Dottie. The PR girl.
So I do not remember how this story ends specifically, but I got to say, Dottie is the fishiest character to me. Like, she seems like she's got a lot of weight to throw around. And I think particularly a woman in this era, in this studio, does not get that kind of weight without playing some kind of dirty pool.
Well, I think what she is showing is like, she's like the representation of soft power. It's like she's the PR person, and so she is calling people at other studios, other people on her level, which is considerably lower than someone like Brodsky, or obviously the owners and the founders of the studio, right? So she's dealing with all other underlings just like her. And so there's, I think she's savvy enough to be able to commiserate with these people, connect with them, because they're all dealing with the same crap, right?
Yeah, I think the one time when he found out that he had to apologize for Dottie to something, but he didn't know what, made it seem like, oh, she's a little bit of the kingmaker / power broker.
Well, yeah, I think we see what her role is in this here, right? Her job is to prop up Maya, the new girl, and Tyler, the closeted gay actor. Right. It's her job to set up the photo ops, to work the press and things like that. So she understands like how to play the game. But obviously, you're right. As a woman at this time, like, she could never advance and do any of that. She's not going to be an actress, but she knows enough people and can play the cards in a way from behind the scenes that, I think she could definitely wreck someone. And she's the kind of person who's in a position that's going to know things, and her knowing things, gives her, if not power over people, at least some stability. You know, she's the kind of person that I think it is important for her to know things and be able to let the people above her know she can be trusted with knowing things. Does that make sense?
Like, that does make sense.
Yeah. Especially as the PR person, like she has to know everything about someone. So much like Brodsky, right? If she's going to put Maya and Tyler out into the public as this new, it couple, she has to know everything about Maya's past and Tyler's past. So she knows where the potential pitfalls are. Because if
do you think she's doing that strictly as a professional, or do you think she likes that power? I kind of get the sense that, like, yes, she's got a good reason for saying she needs this stuff, but I think she kind of gets her jollies and sense of self off of holding this over people.
I hadn't thought about it, but as soon as you said it, I think a little bit yes, because I think she understands, or she has accepted that this is as high as she can rise. For better, for worse.
Exactly. So she's got to make it as powerful as it can be.
Exactly. Yeah. That I'm going to be stuck here doing this. I can't rise any higher because, the structures of the world won't let me. So I'm going to, if this is as high as I can get, I'm going to rule this fiefdom and have as much power as I can here to make sure I don't lose this. So yeah, now that you mentioned, yeah, I think she likes being in the know. She likes saying, oh yeah, I have a friend at the studio, he tells me stuff. Oh yeah, my friend over, works at this other studio across town. Her and I talk, and I know things about people. Because all that stuff helps her do her job, much like you said that Brodsky does. Because Brodsky, you're right, absolutely, he wants to know the truth, so he knows exactly how to shut it down or manipulate it in the way that it best suits him and his bosses. He can't make it up. He has to know what actually happened, so he can deflect when and where he has to. So they are really similar in a way. Now, I don't know, though, I would say, going back to your original assertion, I don't know if Dottie is someone who is looking into Valeria's murder, though. I don't think she is someone who either knows and or wants to know right now, because I don't think it's her concern.
No, I think that's a cold case. Yeah, no, I do think she's interested in knowing anything that has utility. Whereas Brodsky wants to know everything, and he determines if it has utility.
Yeah, well, because it's still front of mind for Brodsky as the head of security. It is back burner for Dottie, because at this point they've moved on. Right, her focus is now on Maya and propping up Maya, and as a way of like a deflection for the fact that their other starlet died.
Exactly.
So her front of mind is something different. While I guess maybe not front of mind for Brodsky. Brodsky is probably the kind of person where everything is right now. Like, he always lives, like every problem is the one he has to deal with right now, because he has to think, he's thinking in like 4D chess, trying to anticipate every potentiality. But yeah, for Dottie, I don't think I definitely think she would want to know. Because that's probably something that she could use or hold over someone, but she's not actively looking into it. While Brodsky also may not be looking into it, he may know or know enough. But Gail is definitely looking into it, and Charlie is only like kind of looking into it. He had that one scene with Jack, Flapjack, right, the trumpet player. He had that one scene where he's asking about Valeria's past, because he has a memory of them like up like north of Hollywood, up in the mountains, where Valeria and Flapjack were there as kids, like on a kids program, like a farm or a ranch or something like that. And he does like a little poking, trying to ask some questions, some vague questions. And Flapjack's basically like, dude, man, like, don't go down this road. And Charlie's kind of like, okay, yeah, no, I'm good. And like, he stops looking into it.
Right. That's where, like, if this were a mystery story in the conventional sense, like the rest of the volume would have been about that.
Yeah. But Charlie throwing caution to the wind and being like, well, clearly, so the hunch was right. There is something going on, something about their past there. I got to go follow this up. At that point, he was like, nah, man, I'm out, and he has other terrible decisions to go make with him and Maya and all that. But yeah, I think it's a constant circumvention of what you expect from a story like this, in that our ostensible hero, our protagonist, is like actively not doing the thing that his version of the character in every other type of story like this. In a story written by Dashiell Hammett, you know,
Right.
that person would throw caution to the wind and be like, I got to find truth. I'm going to do everything I can at the expense of my own self, because I'm motivated to find the truth. Whatever reason I got into this the first time, the reason, regardless of why I started looking into it, I'm so deep now I have to finish it because that's what matters, finding out the truth. Charlie is finding himself more and more involved in this, and he's trying to run from it. He's trying to like actively not be involved.
Yeah. A couple things I want to talk about here. I want to talk about, I just had a few stray comments on Brubaker's art, which like
Phillips
is just really shining.
Phillips.
Phillips, yeah.
Yeah.
Brubaker's writing, it's great. Phillips' art. When he goes to that costume party and he has the face all bandaged up and you can still tell it's Charlie, what is that magic act? Like it's like literally, I mean, obviously the crack in the glasses is the dead giveaway.
Yeah.
But you can just tell from the eyes. Like, God.
I think it's the eyes. I think it's probably a little bit with posture, the way he stands, the way we've seen him stand. I think there are little things you can see some on in terms of like, because there are a lot of actors around, right? A lot of him as people. I think they're drawn a little different than the way he draws Charlie or Gil, right? These kind of beat down, really messed up screenwriters. Their posture, the way they carry themselves. I think there's some slight differences in how they do that. But I think I agree. There are little things like that where you can't see his face. And even without the glasses, you can tell that one, like that's who Charlie is. They know that's Charlie. That's not someone else. Even without seeing his face, you can tell by a silhouette almost, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it made me think, people really praised Tom Hardy's role as Bane because his whole face was covered and all of his acting had to be with vocal inflection, which was a lot of ADR, and everything else was just his eyes and eyebrows. And he talked about how difficult that was to be able to only really communicate via your eyes and eyebrows. And it's like, okay, well, that's hard for an actor. How much harder for an artist when all you can communicate with is the eyes of the character and this, you don't miss a beat with it. So it's why Sean Phillips is Sean Phillips.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's so much good stuff with that. I love kind of, well, one little bit I love is when we see a bit of a scene that's being recorded, being filmed, and it goes black and white, and the text, because Sean Phillips does all his lettering too. The text bubble changes, right, where it's like a lightning bolt coming out of to the text bubble with the idea that you're watching on film or the sound through the film, and then it flips like mid-page. So now we know we're watching the actual actors, not watching like the playback or whatnot. Little things like that I think are so cool. And he does a lot of cool stuff with kind of like overlaying images. I'm trying to find out where it is. Where the background isn't like a background. The background is like a picture or something like that. Or it's a figure or a body or something. So you get this kind of bit of surreal feel to the scene, which I think is something that he does so well there, where he can have a real detailed background. He can have a real sparse background. He said it can be that kind of like overlay of images, almost like a montage background. Anything he has, it works so well. It looks so good on the page.
Yeah. So that was my first note. Second is, I don't think of Ed Brubaker as a particularly funny writer, but I feel like there are little quips that kind of catch me off guard. But some of it is like his sense of humor is to like just have a character throw you off track. So at one point, I'm very much tracking, with Charlie's brain. He's trying to figure out who the executive in the horn room glasses is, because he's slowly got emerging memories of, his blackout drunk uh, memory there. And he's, I think, questioning Dottie about it. And he says, like, do you know a producer with horn rimmed glasses? And she was like, dude,
Yeah.
in this town, that could literally be anyone.
Yeah, it was
Right.
horn glasses and a crew cut. Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, but like, I was hoping to get an answer from Dottie, just like he was, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, yeah, keep seeing this vague picture of him in my head, but that's because I'm in Charlie's head. And then when she's like, that could be literally anyone, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a period piece, and we've seen a lot of lookalikes, especially since we are relying on a somewhat unreliable narrator. Not unreliable in the sense that he's unstable. Although, you could argue that perhaps he is in some ways, but more the problem being that, he literally has no recollection of this thing.
Well, he doesn't know. But I mean, what was I going to say about that? I know what I was going to say about that. Yeah, Brubaker, you're right. He's not like laugh out loud funny. His stuff is pretty dry. Like their quips, their comebacks. It's a lot of like sardonic wit, a lot of sarcasm. It's not like laugh out loud gag humor. It isn't like Mark Russell writing a book or something like that,
Right.
But there is humor in his books in a way that it's more like lightening the mood, because I think the whole idea of him writing so much of his stuff in the past 15, 20-ish years almost, it being this kind of neo-noir stuff that you always think of as being like dark and gritty and serious. But yeah, there is a lot of levity. I think he finds ways to cut that tension, to cut that grittiness without being absurd. Like he's not going to write like an absurdist kind of thing. He may present an absurd kind of situation, but it's never like a laugh out loud funny thing. But yeah, little moments like that, little character beats. A lot of his characters tend to have the similar across books, have a similar kind of sense of humor, very kind of dry, very gallows-ish. But I think that's where he finds a way to undercut the seriousness, the general seriousness that's associated with the genre that he works in.
Yeah. By the way, are you a Hunger Games fan, or were you, back when that was a thing?
I mean, I read
movies?
I read all through the original books. I have not read either the prequels yet.
Okay. Well, the prequels are some of the best stuff out there. But Finnick Odair at one point in Catching Fire, the second one, Katniss is like asking him what he does with all of his money or something like that. And he kind of laughs condescendingly and says like, oh, I haven't dealt with anything as common as money in years. And she said, well, what do people pay you with for the pleasure of your company? And he says, secrets. And there's a line almost exactly that in this book where he talks about like, once rich people don't know what to do with their money anymore.
Oh yeah.
All they have left is secrets. And again, like this is one of those things where I'm juggling so much of like, well, he's saying great things that were true in the period, but how much more true now? It says, Gil's talking to his buddy. Rich men are greedy, Gil, but their real currency is secrets. I guess once you've got all the money in the world, that's the only thing left to bargain with. And then Charlie's interrogating the trumpeter, and the trumpeter says, being rich ain't enough for most rich men. They got to act like a goddamn emperor of Rome too. And I was like, man, this is like great commentary. And if this is what I was looking up frantically before we started podcasting, and these are back of the napkin type numbers here, but your average like uber wealthy person to common person in the 40s was about 32 times greater in income. So that was what we meant by uber wealthy. By 2014, when this was written, it was 260 times.
Yeah.
And now in 2026, it's approximately 290 to 320 times. So it's like, sure that it was true and a valid critique in the 40s. I don't know why one person family entity would need 32 times the average person, not the poorest person, the average person. But I had to think that Brubaker has, an eye on the modern world, when he's writing a period piece like this. And, that is just going to keep, it's so evergreen. It's actually more lush than it was when it was written. Than the period it's about or the period it was written in.
I definitely agree with that point there. Again, I don't know. With this book in particular, I am reluctant to assign, in terms of intent, the idea of like modern comparison of like, I'm going to put this in my period piece as a commentary on current day. For this book in particular, because this one to me really does feel like I'm going to represent as best I can what it was like then. And the fact that it's still relevant now, and now being 2014, 2015, or becomes more relevant, that's a reflection of the times, not of the work. I think this book in particular, I've never read this book thinking that it's meant to be a metaphor or a reflection on today.
No, I don't think he writes that crudely. This is not, I'm a huge fan of this, so this is not derogatory, but it's not a Mark Russell piece. Mark Russell...
He's not trying to make commentary on today's society.
Clearly satirizing something. But I just wonder if that's in the back of his head, like if that's what draws his attention to things like that subconsciously. If like,
it might be.
There's a lot of talk about that in the news. Yeah. And he's like, but I don't want to talk about current events. So, if I'm going to talk about how the wealthy don't care about the poor, I could set it in the same era as Gatsby, or close to Gatsby's 20s. But Gatsby had the same theme in it.
It's impossible for it not to be, because I think these are issues and things that that Brubaker cares about and is interested in. But I guess it's definitely not meant to be satire. It's not meant to be commentary. I think he's just trying to tell a period piece as best he can. And the fact that the fact that some things end up being universal, again, that in and of itself is commentary on our world, on itself. That's meta commentary. That's not. I don't think that's author intent. I don't think that's creator intent in this kind. Because again, he is not afraid to put direct commentary into books and other books. So I don't think he feels the need to, I have to veil this in it was the 1940s. That's how it was back. I don't think he feels the need for that kind of cover if he wants to go after or really make commentary about something. Because again, if you want that commentary, like read The Knives, the book that he and John Phillips did in 2025. There's a storyline there that it just takes direct shots at the way the Hollywood system works now, or the way it worked in the past handful of years when Brubaker was in it. So, it's probably inevitable that there's some bleed, between the way that we see or what may have been in his mind about today's world. But I think the impetus is just like, hey, this is the system was broken then, right? None of this worked then, and that was 1940s. And we were still dealing with these things now. I don't think he's trying to put that much meaning into it. It's just the fact that it's still relevant is just more of a sad state of the way the world is now.
Yeah, no, I think that is a totally fair point. I think perhaps I'm just getting too much in my news feed right now, but it's hard to avoid, but it is though, again, but whether or not it's Brubaker's intent, and again, I don't believe it is. No, I would never go as far to say it's his intent.
But I would definitely agree with the fact that by throwing out those back the napkin numbers and just seeing what the escalation has been and just understanding that those numbers are almost, in terms of thinking about it, the numbers themselves are almost irrelevant. It's just the idea that there's always been this gap. And as long as that there's been a gap, there's always been this struggle, this divide, whether it's 32 times the average, 200, 300 times, whatever it is, the fact that even back then, the fact that we can look back on those times and even put modern day thinking into it, even for a book that, let's say, was written in the 1940s. Let's say you picked up a Dashiell Hammett book You know, you go pick up the Maltese Falcon any of the James Ellroy novels, Black Dahlia, LA Confidential, things like that. Books that were contemporary at the time they were written from this era. You're still going to see those same sort of things. Now, how they're portrayed may be different, but their presence is still going to be there because that's the way the world was. So maybe showing it in more of a negative light is the modern influence, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The way it's reflected back, as opposed to simply saying this is the way it is, understanding that now we know that this is terrible, that this doesn't work. So maybe reflecting it in a slightly more negative light, or trusting that the reader is going to see it that way and playing into that may be the modern influence, as opposed to I'm going to put this in here as a direct reference to the way it is today. He can simply show the world that the way it was and trust that the reader in our more modern day setting is going to see it they're going to see it in the proper context.
We're going to fill in the gaps. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. He's going to trust the reader to understand that I'm showing you this because A, yes, it is terrible, but also B, this is how it was. And we all understand now that it's terrible, but it's still the way that it actually was. I'm not putting this into the story. I'm reflecting what it actually was, but I trust you, the reader, to understand that we know this is terrible. So maybe that's the modern influence.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good spin.
I like that.
Yeah. So, what else? Is there anything else, plot wise that's really jumping out? I feel like we're still not really resolved on anything. We just
and that was my kind of last note here,
but doesn't resolve.
Exactly. Yeah. Like my last kind of note is a bit of a question of like, have we learned anything new about the plot? And have we even even if we haven't moved any further in the progression of solving the mystery, as it were, have we even added any more elements to it? And I think very little actually happens in this volume in that sense. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's a problem.
No, because that's a much more interesting story now than it was at the end of volume 1.
At this point, it's almost, I don't want to say that the death has become secondary, but it kind of has. Right? It's really in the back of the story, mainly because Charlie isn't focused on it. We get a little more lore about Valeria's childhood, right? Growing up, on that kids program with Jack the Trumpeter, Flapjack, up in the woods, kind of in north of Hollywood. So we get a little more backstory there. We see some weird stuff going on with Kent, right? One of the co-founders of the studio. No, Kemp, right? The old man who pretends to maybe be senile, maybe is Al Kemp.
Yeah.
One of the co-founder there. We see him out in the woods, right? With like a woman tied up to a tree, and he's got a camera there. So, but we have no. Does that have anything to do with Valeria's death? If you read up the stories, you're like, well, there's probably some connection there, but at this point, it could be literally anything, right? Because we don't know what was going on up there, just that she spent time there as a child. So is this a childhood thing coming back? Is there a larger thing going on? We haven't gained any progress. We haven't moved the ball forward at all in terms of figuring out what actually happened or why it happened. And yet the story is still compelling to me because I think the cast of characters and the world that they're showing is so rich. That it's almost like I forget about the fact that, there was this inciting incident at the beginning of this book, in issue 1. You've almost forgotten that to me.
Well, it's really only hanging over Charlie more than it is the reader.
Yeah.
And my thing about it is I'm more now concerned about the next kill. Like, who's going to die next? Because it feels like it's building to that, right? Yeah. It's like, is Charlie going to get himself killed? Gil certainly is trying. Like, I think Gil has a martyr complex.
That's what I was going to say. Gil, because,
and then obviously you're worried about Maya.
Yeah.
Literally being another blonde or, the next blonde or whatever they call her. The
next one up. Yeah. I think Gil is the great one because we see, he is staying back. He's doing the writing for Charlie, right? And Charlie's off at a premiere. I think he's off at the premiere or some party with or the weekend with Mai. He's out with her, and we see Gil as he's trying to write these pages. We see him with Dashiell Hammett, and then we see him. He writes up this ransom note, this blackmail note, and sends it to the studio, right, with a picture of Valeria from the magazine cover. We don't know what his motivation is. We don't know. Is he actually trying to solve this? Is he actually trying to get some money? Is he just trying to get the, Brodsky in the studio? Like, he's just trying to get them to slip up. Like, we don't know what his motivation is, but regardless, it feels like a bunch of bad decisions either way. It feels like you're right. Whether Gil has a martyr complex or not, it feels like if anyone's going to stumble their way into getting killed, doing something either right or something stupid, it really feels like it's going to be Gil. Charlie stumbled into this thing by the fact that he was there when it happened and he can't remember because he was blackout drunk. Now you have Gil inserting himself into this. He's putting himself into it by throwing this blackmail request or letter to the studio. He's inserting himself into the story, and like that never goes well. Because of the people that know what's going on, like Charlie has no idea what's going on in the grand scheme of things, and Gil knows even less, presumably, as far as we know, right?
Yeah.
As far as we've been shown,
Gil, I don't think Gil has any inside scoop, although he clearly has a better read of these people.
I think that's
Charlie.
it. I think because Charlie knows what he saw, which was Valeria kind of passed out dead on the floor next to the couch, and the crime scene photos, she's been restaged where she hung herself. And so he doesn't know what he doesn't know, but he knows that there's something wrong there. I think you're right on Gil. I think Gil going to the scene with him and Hammett is the idea that he doesn't know any of the specifics, but he has an idea of who would be pulling the strings, and it doesn't feel right. He doesn't know any of the specifics, but it's like he sees the larger narrative mode. Like, he's seeing it as a script. He's seeing it as a story. And he can see the narrative points of, well, if this wasn't a suicide, if it was a murder or an accidental death, or if it's a cover-up, if this is a cover-up, how would it play out? Who would be involved? Who would know? What would their motivations be to make it seem like a suicide versus murder or accidental death or something like that? Who would benefit? So he's seeing the pieces from that side, but he doesn't know any of the specifics. He doesn't know the why at all. He's pretty certain on the who. And it seems like he got the who right, obviously. I guess it's not that hard to tell. It
is not. Yeah.
Regardless of what actually happened, Gil knows that Brodsky's going to know. As we talked about at the beginning, right? Brodsky's the guy who his job is to be in the know. So at the very least, Gil knows that whatever happened, Brodsky had a hand in something of it, whether in the act of it doing it or in the act of covering it up. Brodsky's somehow involved. And so he knows that much to send it to the studio. It's going to end up in Brodsky's hands, and whatever motivation Gil has to find out answers or get whatever he wants out of this, it's going to go through Brodsky. He knows all his road is going to lead to him. Whether or not he actually cares about finding out the truth, whether he actually cares about knowing the details, it's unclear at this point. Because as far as we know, he has shown no real interest in the case before. We've seen Charlie express interest in it because he was there, but no motivation to do anything about it. Gil has shown no interest, but he's now motivated to at least kind of poke the bear a little bit.
Yeah.
He's at least trying to instigate things. For what reason, we don't know yet. But again, as I said before, regardless of his motivation, seems like probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, so Gil, I think what's interesting is at the top, I think I wanted to say that Gil is the most morally pure character. But, he's also got plenty of his own problems.
He
is one of those Toby Ziegler types who is so sure of, well, this is, I guess, this is bringing into light part of Toby Ziegler's character in The West Wing that the actor disagrees with, but he's so sure of his moral rightness that he does not care what happens to him personally and does not care about even necessarily doing things the right way, as long as everyone knows that, you know, he's onto them and he's got the upper hand morally.
Yeah, but again, it's unclear what Gil's motivation is here, because his motivation could be entirely selfish. You know,
it could just be sticking it to the people who booted him out of the industry.
It could be that. It could be petty revenge, and this is something he can hold over them. It could actually be blackmail. Whether or not he actually, because his letter says something like, "I know what happened," or Valeria, like, "I know what happened to Valeria," or whatever. Whether or not he actually knows in terms of blackmail, the blackmail could just be the fact that he knows something's up, right? It could just be something's not right with this, something's fishy. So if I just poke him enough, the blackmail is just instigating them because I know something went awry here. It could be that he's the one person that's like, "Hey man, we gotta follow the truth." You know, he could be the one good person. We don't know enough about him. All we know is that he's an incredibly flawed person. He's definitely not. He wouldn't qualify as a good person, but he could still be a mostly moral person, an ethically right person. You know, he could still want to do the right thing. Even
well, okay, yeah, okay, you know, not to get too derailed, but my brain just goes here, especially when I'm tired. But there is there's another great West Wing quote of one time, you know, Bartlett has to do the drop in and, you know, blast the environmental lobby for arson or something like that. And he's conflicted about it. And he tells Leo, he's like, it just feels wrong to score political points for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And Leo's just like, yep. And Bartlett's like, I'm a victim of my own purity of character, which I think is something Gil might say about himself.
He probably would. He's probably the kind of person that justifies his actions that way. You know, he's someone but he from what we've seen, he seems pretty selfish and self-centered. But he probably justifies his actions as being like, I know what's right. Whether or not what is right is what's good. But he is someone I think has strong convictions. I think we can at least say that, right? When he believes something, he's going to go with it. I mean, again, the idea of having Charlie testify against him, you name his name and willingly be blacklisted, so they could have this arrangement here. Like, that was Gil's idea. You know, so he's someone that clearly has conviction. Whether or not that conviction is pointed in a good and/or ethical direction, and it's up in the air right now. But I think it was an interesting choice and a fun narrative choice in this volume to kind of shift the perspective out of Charlie's eyes. You know, because Charlie is the focus of pretty much everything we see in Volume 1, and we leave his perspective quite a bit in this volume. You know, we spend a lot of time with Gil, and Gil and Brodsky spend a lot of time together there. So we shift away from him a little more, which I think is cool. In that, in terms of it rounds out the world. It gives all the other characters a little more, like they're a little more full. You know, They inhabit a little more of the world. We understand them better, and we understand them as a reader by their own actions and not just how Charlie sees them. You know, because we got to see a little more of Gil and how he acts and interacts with other people, and not just not just viewing Gil through Charlie's eyes. We see, you know, because so much of the way we see about Gil comes from the narration of our you know, third person narrator of every time he talks about him, how he's a drunk, how he's going out to gamble and things like that. Those are all the ways that Charlie sees Gil, but getting to see him outside of that, and also seeing Brodsky outside of that, not seeing them through Charlie's perspective, helps the story, makes all the characters more interesting when you're not just locked into one person's POV. And that can be interesting. There's great stories that are done that way, and there's a version of the story that can be told that way, where Charlie's in every scene, and the only things that you, the reader, know are the things that he knows. But if you're gonna venture out from that and expand the world, this is a good way to do it.
Yeah, can I just say that I don't think Charlie is as concerned as he should be about Bill's well-being.
Definitely not.
Given that, like, he's kind of like, oh, he's going to go get himself killed. F him. Yeah. It's like, do you know what happened to you and your career if he gets himself killed or just refuses to write for you anymore?
Yeah.
You're no longer a writer. Like, it's that frail.
Yeah. No. Without question. Charlie should know better than to leave Gil alone. And it's like he's self-aware that he should know better and still doesn't, which I guess makes it worse. Like, the self-awareness doesn't help him. But Charlie does nothing but make bad decisions. Like, it's just,
That's true. He's a pro.
You're absolutely right that he should definitely be more concerned about Gil. It's almost like he's accepted this inevitability of, like, it's like he's accepted the inevitability that this whole arrangement is going to come crashing down at some point, and it feels like Charlie believes it's going to be Gil's fault when it's probably going to be Charlie's own fault. But he feels like
it'll be enough Gil's fault that if you want to believe that it's all Gil's fault, you'll be able to.
Maybe so.
And I think that's the thing about the cast of great characters is like there's enough blame to go around everywhere that everyone can always obfuscate and say like, well, this isn't on me.
And I think Charlie in specific may believe that, like, I can go and do these things because this is all going to end anyway. At some point, it's going to come crashing down. It's like he's pretty fatalistic about that. This is all going to end at some point. This whole this arrangement that I have with Gil is just like the flimsiest house of cards. It's all come down at some point. And so it's almost like he's making decisions of like, well, it doesn't matter what I do because Gil's going to work until he doesn't. And then when that comes crashing down, it's all going to be his fault and I can pawn it off on him. It's like he's convinced himself that he is free of blame of this, which obviously isn't true, but I think it's the way I think he looks at the world, that by accepting Gil and letting Gil off the hook in a way, by not being more concerned about it, he can be like, well, hey, I did everything I could. I couldn't stop him. No one could stop Gil. And so when this all comes crashing down, he can put all of his blame onto Gil, when maybe only like 60% of it's Gil's fault, but a large chunk of it's still going to be Charlie's own self-destruction, because he's clearly he's just as self-destructive as Gil, but maybe just in a different way.
Exactly. Yeah.
He may think himself to be on a higher plane. I think at times Gil's called him out on this, right? It's like when he's putting on the tux for the gala, right? Like, Gil calls him out on this idea that Charlie thinks he is on a plane above. And he has that one bit of, during that premiere, he's talking about how he sees that someone like him and Maya are very similar, right? That they actually do want to be in the limelight. They do want to be there, but that he's just a moth to the flame, but Maya figured out how to be the flame. It's that kind of thing of like, he understands that this is something he actually does kind of want, but he doesn't know how to get it. And he doesn't know how to control it. But he accepts that there's a vanity to him, that he does want this, because I think he feels something that Gil doesn't. And it's almost like it's a way for him to, again, to put himself in his mind, for Charlie to put himself above Gil. While Gil, I think, Gil probably knows exactly who and what he is, right? I feel like he makes his bad decisions with eyes wide open. And even the stuff here, whatever he's doing with the blackmail with the studio and with Brodsky, I feel like they may be drunken open eyes, but like he has an understanding that he is self-destructive and he's doing this. Like you said, does he have a martyr complex? Does he have a death wish? Maybe, I don't know. But I think Charlie still deludes himself. And he still has that veil up about, even when he criticizes his own actions, his own self, I don't think he's really doing it from a place of honesty. I think Gil has lost all pretense and knows exactly who and what he is. And maybe is okay with it. If not, he's okay with it. He's at least accepted it. He's at least accepted this is the lot that he's drawn for himself. And he's willing to go down with it, while Charlie still thinks there's a way out. Even as he's doing it, he berates himself for doing it again. But I still think he has a delusion about his own self view, the way he views himself, his own self-worth, and his position in society or within the studio or whatever hierarchy you want to put it in. You know, there's an honesty to Gil that Charlie doesn't have.
Yeah. Well, it's why Gil doesn't have a job and Charlie does.
Well, exactly. Very true. And it's also why Gil comes off as kind of like a jerk and all that. There is a blunt honesty to Gil that Charlie only in like times of high stress does he actually snap, because he can't live the truth, because his truth is he can't do the job he allegedly says he's doing. You know? Yeah.
Well, and I loved his cover up, by the way, of acting a bit of a prima donna. I mean, like, you know, shoot it the way I originally wrote it, when, you know, the truth is, like, Gil wasn't home. I couldn't do the rewrites. I couldn't do the rewrites.
Yeah. You know, the fact that, hey, he's putting on a pretty good act. He's putting on a pretty good act to keep this cover up.
Any other notes on this volume? Are we ready for volume 3?
I think that's about it here. We talked about, you know, I have more notes just on Sean Phillips' art, as I always do, because I love it so much. Again, this is a book that you can either just focus on the text and get the story of Brubaker's writing. You can just focus on the art and get the incredible work by Sean Phillips and Elizabeth Breitweiser. The colors are fantastic here. Again, when they flip into like black and white or muted colors or much brighter colors, all of it's of a piece. All of it feels natural. And it's just, I love these books so much as a completed collaborative work, but even in isolation, the parts of the story, the parts that make up the comic just are some of my favorite things. And not a lot of books, for me at least, can you separate like, oh, if I just read this, it makes sense. There's some books that are like, I think the writing is okay, kind of fine, whatever. But because the art is so dynamic, the art is so well done, you can just flip through it that way. Brubaker and Phillips stuff, I can do either or both, or you know, whatever within it. I'm going to get a level of enjoyment out of it. So just want to reiterate how much I love these guys, how much I love the team of them working together, and them doing a period book like this is so cool. It's great to see Sean Phillips's art in the era that is probably best suited for it. You know, there is something. There's something inherently retro about his stuff, but it's not like the golden age retro of like, this is the way we think things are. There is just kind of a naturalist, like, yeah, this is the past and it was shiny and glossy on the surface, but still kind of nasty and dark and real on the inside. And there's something inherent, I think, in Sean Phillips' work that just fits the past so well. Whether that past is like the 70s or the 60s and Criminal or Reckless, or the past is in the 40s, Golden Age Hollywood, like here in the Fade Out. Something about it works so well with that.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, you can find us all the usual places: StoriedArcs.com, Instagram Storied Arcs, Blue Sky Storied Arcs, and we will see you next week for the final 4 issues collected in Volume 3.
Peace.